So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
I'm trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
You know I blame it on industry. I blame it on my own hypocrisy. Miseducation and politicians. No one's willing to step up and speak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the P.A.C.E Radio Show, live here at the lifestyleradio.ca. I'm your host, Al Graham. For those who don't know, the P.A.C.E Radio Show features Canadian cannabis advocates who reach out publicly to educate people to those sharing the medical cannabis story. These may be well-known people to advocates who you've never heard of before. Tonight, Kim has brought us a guest, and Kim Cooper is my joint host tonight. And her guest is a mother who has a young child or young daughter who was a cannabis patient. It's a story that you won't want to miss. But before we find out more, I'm going to have a little quick chat with Kim. Kim, are you there?
Yes, I am.
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
I got two Kims.
I'll have to ask you to specify.
I got to ask. All right, never thought about that one. Okay, Kim Cooper. I'll call her Northern Ontario Kim. How's that?
How you doing tonight, Al? Everything is good on this end. A bit of confusion there with two Kims on the scene.
That's, it happens the odd time. So what can you do, eh?
Not too much. That's all good. It's all good.
Okay, before we bring the second Kim in, I'm just going to just mention quickly here. Last time, Kim, Northern Kim, you had you had your niece, or you had some family there with you, watching you do the show. What did everybody think?
Oh, they loved it. It was my granddaughter, actually, and I gave her a little shout out at the beginning of the show, and apparently she was yelling back at the speakers downstairs saying, "Hi, Grandma, hi, Grandma." So everybody thoroughly enjoyed it. That's for sure. They enjoyed the show very much.
Yes. Talking about family enjoying the show, myself, my 84-year-old mother. Hi, Mom. She's listened to every show since we came to lifestyleradio.ca, and she's thoroughly enjoyed every one of them. So this is
excellent.
My hi, Mom moments.
There you go. Hi, Al's mom.
Okay, well, we got that over with. So hey, let's bring our guest into the show tonight, and unfortunately, I didn't ask her how to pronounce her name properly, so hopefully I get it right. And so we'd like to welcome Kim Hardy Martelle to the P.A.C.E Radio Show.
I'll
Kim?
correct you on that one, sir.
I knew
That's my Facebook name. Hardy is my maiden name. I go by Kim Martelle.
Martelle, okay,
yeah.
All right,
yeah.
Just so I get that right. Martelle, okay, I'll correct that as we go along then. Good. Well, hey, welcome welcome to the P.A.C.E Radio Show, and we really appreciate you coming on and talking, telling us the story and so on and so forth tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. It's kind of nice to get together with friends again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is good to be with friends and people within the community and stuff. I will pass you over to Kim, and usually what happens here is we let the joint host ask a majority of the questions, and every once in a while I'll jump in and let you know when it's a commercial break or if I've got something to ask. All right?
Perfect.
So, all right, Kim, over to you.
Thanks so much for the intro, Al. It was great discussing family life and all of that. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Kim. It's been a long time since I've seen you in person, but we chat quite a bit on Facebook and social media. How are you doing these days?
One day at a time.
That's it. One day at a time. For those in the listening audience that may not be familiar with, you are quite the heroic mother, I must say. And anybody that wants to find out more about Kim will give you directions on how to do that later on, and find out more about Kim and her daughter Cadence story. Quick overview: your daughter had Dravet syndrome. Is that correct?
No, she had. We never really received a diagnosis for Cadence, other than intractable epilepsy. She had an idiopathic epilepsy, which doctors couldn't pin to any one syndrome. That's not for a lack of trying. There was a lot of genetics testing over the course of her 10 years. And we weren't successful in finding anything until recently. We got a phone call and saying that she'd participated in something that's called the Genome Sequencing Project through Sick Kids of Toronto, and they've found some results in their report, and we have yet to get a telehealth conference going to discuss those. But you know, it's a little bit late. It wouldn't. I don't know that it would have changed anything. But definitely it's really important for parents to get a diagnosis, because maybe it will change something. Maybe it would help them better understand things. We're always looking for answers, I think, whether, you know, when you have a child with a condition like Cadence's that's so rare and so devastating, you're always looking for more information.
Absolutely. Just for those that are unaware still, you lost the fight. Cadence lost her struggle recently. It hasn't been that long. I know you were on another program on this radio station shortly after her passing as well, which was amazing to me that you were still able to keep yourself together to pass on information at that moment in time. When did we lose Cadence?
June 18th last year. She, we were giving her cannabis medicine, and we were breaking the law to do so because at the time it was so difficult. I think you guys were aware of the legal landscape of it. We had a prime minister that didn't support it. We've got no research. We don't know what we're doing. Parents are, it's like going into a blind room. But I think when you get to a point with seizures that your child's having hundreds of seizures a day and they're not letting up, and you just think, you know, if we don't do something, we've tried everything, and if we don't try this, that's it. And so we were using the medical marijuana and trying to navigate all this ourselves, learning how to make oils and tinctures, because obviously a child with a feeding tube and the inability to eat food by mouth is not going to be able to smoke a joint. So we were doing that. Nor would we want them to. Nor would you want a child to smoke anything. And yes. It can be carcinogenic, and you don't want to take any chances that way. So eating your medicine is the best way, and especially juicing it. We were giving her cannabis juice, and we would have loved to have stuck with that because it is the safest, the first do no harm approach, I believe. But the regulations even now would make it impossible to give a child fresh raw cannabis juice, and we couldn't keep up with the supply.
Yeah, what the problem with that lies within what you're speaking of is the laws against fresh cannabis. Currently, we can only purchase dried marijuana from our legal producers, which are the only ones that are legally allowed to sell in Canada to customers. They don't offer any fresh flowers. And of course, juicing requires a fresh product. So basically that leaves people with wanting to juice the most natural way, as you say. You have to break the law and grow. And a lot of people just can't do that.
That's right. And if you want to make sure that what you're giving a child is organic, that hasn't been polluted with any sort of chemicals in the growing process. You can, especially if you're juicing. I mean, even if you flush a plant, which many growers and users of cannabis will attest that it should be properly flushed to get rid of any chemicals, at least for a week or two before you use it. But with Cadence, we tried to get her the best. Approaching the medical cannabis, knowing nothing about it, we just used our common sense and thought we want to do the first do no harm approach, and approach this from whether we were breaking the law or not. We wanted to make sure that we were doing this the most careful and responsible way, knowing very little about the effects, especially the long-term effects of medical marijuana. But I educated myself a lot to it because I had to, because she needed me to, and we tried the medical cannabis, and after getting her on a concentrated high CBD oil, she was able to transition off the ketogenic diet, was doing amazingly well. Her health improved dramatically, and for the first time in over 3 years, she started eating food by mouth again. And she was on the ketogenic diet for seizure control. Like I said, we tried basically everything we could for this little girl, even stem cell. So she was on the ketogenic diet, and the diet is quite unpalatable, and it's very unbalanced. It's a lot of high fats, very, very little carbs. So when you're giving a child a meal that is largely protein, a shot glass full of oil, and 2 grapes, and maybe a half cup of whipping cream, that's, for a little person who has so many seizures and has difficulty swallowing, it ruined it for her. And that was one of the hard things, because a lot of the therapies that they use to treat seizures are, if they're not invasive, then they're just very, very difficult to continue with a child, to get into a child, and to try and maintain their health. I really feel that the conventional therapies that were available to us, the only choices we had to offer her failed her, that they weren't good enough, and they didn't do a good enough job at controlling her seizures. They made her unhealthy, and they weakened her so much so that we were desperate for anything that was going to try and improve her quality of life. So here we are, trying the medical cannabis, and she was doing really well. She started eating for the first time, like I said, and the first time in 3 years, and it was almost within just a couple of weeks that she started chewing and salivating all over again and putting things in her mouth again. And I couldn't believe that, because it takes a baby a while to learn how to eat. But it was almost like riding a bicycle. It was instinctual to her, and all of a sudden we got her off the ketogenic diet. We started giving her carbohydrates again, and she was enjoying the food and loving the food, and the seizures were, I think could we have figured things out better and had a plan, and that maybe had some more research into cannabinoid medicine specifically for seizures and epilepsy. If somebody had been looking at that then I think there's a very good chance she could have still been alive. But then there's all those hidden variables when you have a child with intractable epilepsy, those health complications that you can't anticipate for anything. And ironically, it wasn't seizures that took her. She did have a very long seizure before she went into a coma, and that's but the cause of that was something we may never know what caused it. And she had a sudden catastrophic dive of sodium, and I don't know anybody who's a doctor or knows the levels of sodium. Her sodium levels dropped down to 90, and that is catastrophically low. A person who doesn't have epilepsy would experience a seizure having such low sodium levels, right? And that sent her into status and into coma, and that also can contribute to such low sodium. It can contribute to cardiac arrest. But her heart was strong and her breathing was good, and here she is. And we rushed her by ambulance to. We tried the emergency medication, but she'd been in a seizure for an hour, and she was deadlocked in the seizure. And we were using the emergency medication. It wasn't working. We called the ambulance, and they took her, and I just knew it was the last time she would go. It was knew it was a feeling, and and they took her to Strathroy first, and they intubated her there. They put a breathing tube down her throat then, and then they took her on to Children's Hospital in London, Ontario, and she was in ICU. They started giving her midazolam, morphine, and then they started with the Dilantin, and none of that could get her seizures under control. They were having great difficulty stopping the sodium loss. They couldn't figure out why the sodium was just coming out of her body despite all the sodium they were giving her. And when you try to restabilize a person from that kind of sodium loss, that creates complications. That's kind of like a pendulum swing, right?
Yeah, too much all at once.
Yeah. So we were in the hospital, and we had nurses coming in for shift changes every 12 hours or so, and we talked to them about Cadence, and it was just a waiting game because she was in a coma and she was hooked up to the intubation. We were waiting for the seizures to stop. We had no idea how much damage the seizure and trying to restabilize her sodium levels. We had no idea how much damage that had done to her brain. But we were talking to one of the nurses, and when they gave her the Dilantin, I got kind of frantic because her breathing and her respiratory and her heart function on the her stats went erratically up and down. And because of the intubation, she developed a MRSA infection in her chest, and she sounded like she was drowning. And as a mother, that's probably the one thing that bothered me the most. I thought, if she's going to pass, I don't want her to drown in her own secretions. I don't want that to be the way she goes. I don't want it to be that traumatic for her. Right. And I kind of had that sinking feeling in my heart that we'd fought as much as we could. And my husband and I were nowhere near ready to say goodbye to our daughter. But we kind of knew that that's what we were facing. Before the doctors even took us aside, we knew that that's what we were facing. So they did an MRI on her. And the day they did the MRI, she had this gentleman nurse in looking after her, and so good with her, talked to her and everything. And I talked to him about the medical marijuana. She'd been without it. At this point, she'd been in the hospital a week, constantly seizing for a week. And I told him, she really needs her medicine. And I called a friend, and he made a glycerin tincture and spent 14 hours all through the night making it. And then he came right away, drove to London and delivered it to us. And he's like, I don't know if this is how much this is going to do for her at this point. After he saw her, he just knew she was really struggling and in a coma, and this wasn't going to be the cure-all. And you know what? Realistically, I know what cannabis can do, and I wasn't disappointed at all, because my wish is that we all have a time. We all have a time when we need to leave this world. We all come here for a purpose. And my only concern was that she needed to leave this world with dignity, with respect, and with comfort. And I looked at it from the aspect of palliative care. I want my daughter to pass peacefully. So he brought me the elixir. I went to the doctor, the neurologist that was on the floor, and I said, I have an elixir I want to give to my daughter. She's been without her cannabis medicine for a week. You're not getting any control with all these drugs you're giving her. And I said, the Dilantin is really causing problems. I said, this infection in her chest is so bad. And I said, I just want to give her some comfort. And he said to me, well, this isn't something we're used to, and we don't know what this will do. He said, what do you expect this to do? He said, I'm just worried that you think this will be a miracle for her. And I said, I don't have any unrealistic expectations, but I know what cannabis will do for her. I know that it'll calm her. I know that it will reduce the infection in her chest. And I know that it will quell her seizures. And it did all those things.
Right.
He said, in order for you to go ahead with this, we cannot be the ones to give it to her. You would have to give it to her, and we need to have a plan. And I totally respect that. We needed to have a plan. And they know as much, if not less, than we do as parents about cannabis, because we've actually done our homework, right?
That's right. That's right. They're mostly uneducated. Can I interrupt you right there? I think, Al, are we ready for a break?
I was sitting back and I was letting Kim tell her story, and I was going to interrupt when she was finished. But since we stopped now, I'll do that now.
All right. I saw the message board.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. No, I just thought I'm gonna allow her to finish this story before I jump in for the commercial break. So, thanks for sharing that, Kim. So, okay. As I mentioned, it's break time. Tonight's bumper music is by the Killer and Time Band and their song "Ounce of Goodness." When we return, Kim and I will continue this talk with our guest, Kim Martelle, with her very powerful story. This is the P.A.C.E Radio Show here on the lifestyleradio.ca. This is the P.A.C.E Radio Show.
Least expected. Oh, the greatest gift of all. Ounce of goodness.
The following is a public service announcement from the Canadian Medical Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Medical Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, we feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled, or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet www.canadiantherapeuticcannabispartners.com, on Facebook, CMCP Society, or search Canadian Medical Cannabis Partners.
This is Al Graham of the P.A.C.E Radio Show. Are you keeping pace, as in keeping people advocating cannabis education? If you're not, and you're a cannabis consumer, then why not? Others are working hard every day to help educate people about cannabis so you can enjoy your daily 420. Get involved and speak out. Be loud and proud so that you can keep pace. Tune into the P.A.C.E Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear about people advocating cannabis education here on lifestyleradio.ca.
Growing your own vegetables, flowers, or even medicinal plants can be a challenge without the right equipment and proper know-how. At BMA Hydroponics, not only are they your urban horticultural experts and suppliers, but their staff holds the customer's needs paramount to making a sale. Family-owned with decades of experience and knowledge, they offer free advice in person, by phone, or email. BMA Hydroponics wants to ensure you have the advice you need, which is why you'll find tips and tricks on different ways to grow, like wick, ebb and flow, drip, or aeroponic system, as well as other helpful links at bmahydroponics.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, just let them know, and they'll do everything they can to get what you're looking for. At BMA Hydroponics, each staff member also possesses a federal exemptee MMAR license, making their strong suit empathy, experience, and dedication to their customers. Because when you know how to grow, you'll have results that make you proud. BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario. Visit bmahydroponics.com.
BMA offers cannabinoid testing, so if you want to prove you've got good medicine, head to BMA Hydroponics and prove it.
Problems in 10 feet tall, and there's no one you can call.
Hello and welcome back. You are listening to the P.A.C.E Radio Show here at lifestyleradio.ca. And yes, we are live. But if you missed the live shows, you can always catch us afterwards at Spreaker, Mixcloud, and TuneIn Radio, plus other social media. And I'd also like to remind everyone to tune in to the Indie Garage Radio Show with host Master Dean, who features independent punk, heavy metal, and goth bands from around the world. So listen in Saturday nights at 10 p.m. At lifestyleradio.net. Tonight on the P.A.C.E Radio Show, I'm joined by our guest, Kim Martelle, plus our hard-working joint host, Northern Kim Cooper. Kim and Kim, are you both with me?
Yes, we are.
I'm back.
Good. Just so you know, I got a text message during the last segment, and my mother says hi.
Oh,
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
See, this is the great thing about live radio. You got everything right there and then. So,
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Kim, you were telling us a powerful story before the break, and I'll let Northern Kim get us rolling again.
Thanks very much, Al. When during the break, I was able to go and get some tissues because I think that's required for tonight's show. When we went on to the break, we were discussing with Kim Martelle the events that took place towards the end of her daughter's short life. And we ended off at the point where Kim was now having discussions with the doctors about giving cannabis-oil treatment to her daughter in the ICU. Kim, you want to pick it up from there?
Yeah. She was receiving this cannabis elixir. The doctors asked that we had have a plan. So I said, I'm going to give her 5 cc's of this cannabis elixir every hour. And he said, okay, you do this then. And I said, well, I want the Dilantin stopped. And because the Dilantin was causing a lot of problems for her and always has. It was a medication that I actually had to video record that once she'd been on, how detrimental it was to her. So we did that, or the doctors reduced the Dilantin, stopped the Dilantin, phased her off of it, I guess. And we started with the cannabis right away, 5 cc's every hour. Within 24 hours, the seizures had stopped. And the doctors had to take us aside at that point. They'd gotten the results back from the MRI. That day that gentleman nurse I was telling you about who was so kind to our little girl, I was talking to him about cannabis, about being at the extracts trial in Ottawa, the trial for oils and extracts and edibles, and at the Supreme Court. And I said what an honor it was to be there, because it felt so momentous. It felt like finally parents could get the elixirs and the tinctures and the edibles that they so desperately needed to be able to give this medicine to their children.
Yep.
So they wouldn't have to smoke it. It is actually quite a humane thing to be able to allow that, and the fact that it was still illegal. The ruling on this court hearing was so important to me, and at the same day that night that I was telling him this was the night before the results came out in the news as to whether the Supreme Court ruled in favor of oils and extracts. So I was having this conversation with him, and he went home that night, and he returned the next day. He went home and he was listening to the news all night to see if he could find the results for me, because I was inundated. And the next day when he returned, he told me the good news, that the oils and extracts were approved by the Supreme Court of Canada. And at the very same
momentous news to receive from a member of the nursing community.
Yeah, but at the very same time that we got that news, it just came just minutes after we'd come out of a room with the doctors to look at the results of the MRI. And the doctors told us that there was so much myelin damage on her nerve cell that there'd be no coming back from it. and we had to make a decision as parents whether or not we would leave her on life support or whether we'd do the kind thing and let her go. And so when he came in, the nurse had a big smile on his face, and he said they approve, and I just come out of that room. I just came out of the room, and my husband and I had to figure out what we were going to do at that point, and it was bittersweet. It was like, oh, that's good news, but it's too late for her. And that moment really impacted me, and it was so ironic. Within hours of this news coming out, we get this other news about our daughter, and so she's taking this cannabis elixir, and the doctors and the nurses were all whispering. My mom was laying down on a cot in another room beside Cadence's room, and I don't think the nurses realized she was in there, and they stepped aside of Cadence's room to talk for a minute, and they said, "I can't believe she's still hanging on." And the doctors, we made the decision. We didn't take too long to decide. We made the decision to take the intubation out to see what she could do on her own, because we didn't feel it was fair to keep her on life support when we knew that it was up to her at that point. And artificial life support isn't life. It's So we made the decision. They took the tube out, and the doctors didn't expect her to survive past 24 hours. In fact, they had a very frank conversation with us that usually with something this bad, it would be 24 hours and she would go. But at that point, she was still so gurgly. But it was improving. The infection in her chest was improving. And she hung on a week longer than any of the doctors anticipated.
Wow.
And during that week, the infection seemingly cleared in her chest. Her stats calmed down and just tapered off over the course of the week, gently. And the day after we were given this news, or the day after we decided to have her taken off the intubation, she was still breathing on her own. And her stats calmed down, and we had one final request. My husband said, could we please take her outside? The weather had been beautiful. We've been walking back and forth to the hospital every day, and we'd say it every single day, I wish we could get Cadence out in this weather, because she would have just loved it. She loved being outside. And the nurse said, oh my gosh, this lovely nurse, her name was Kate, she has epilepsy. Kate suffers from epilepsy, but it's well controlled with medications. And she said, which was ironic in itself, that Kate was instrumental in helping us with Cadence. And she brought in a wheelchair, and I sat down in the wheelchair, and she put pillows all around me. She laid Cadence in my arms, and she wheeled us. She took us out of the hospital and wheeled us, my daughter, in my arms, in a coma, still breathing. She wheeled us all around the hospital, and we sat under these beautiful catalpa trees that were in bloom, and the birds were above us, and it was so precious to have that moment with our little girl, and she would not have had that moment if we hadn't started the cannabis when we did, because it was able to calm her stats. She was able to maintain that one more week. That was precious. That week was so precious to us. And her whole family was encamped in her room for the whole week. She had both sets of grandparents there. She had aunts and uncles come visit her every single day.
My goodness. Wow. What an amazing, amazing story. I have no words at this moment. This minute.
Yes, it's very, like I said, it's a very powerful story. And
it really has to make a person or a parent feel like there's so much more to why we end up on earth. Like, what are we doing here? You know, what are we doing here? We're supposed to be doing something great with our time here, and I can't be any prouder of my little girl, because in the 10 years that she was on this earth, she achieved something so great. She was a nonverbal child. She never had any trouble communicating with people.
No, she didn't. That much I can say for sure. I had the great honor and pleasure of meeting this young lady in Ottawa during the Smith extract trial that you spoke of earlier. She is quite the little girl. You are an amazing person for doing as much as you've done, and your education and ongoing education for people to be aware is unbelievable. It's unsurpassed by anybody that I know personally. But you've been involved in so many things in getting the word out. And you were at the Supreme Court trial. I was there as well, and I think you and Cadence passed by along with your husband and other child in our hotel room, and we had a little evening there while we were there. It was quite nice.
Yeah.
Since then, you've appeared on CTV in a 5-part news series with Roger Klein. You've spoken at several different groups. Cadence was also the youngest member, I believe, of the P.A.C.E?
Yes.
During her time with us. So you're out there. You're telling people your story. You've joined us here tonight to tell the masses your story. Do you see, well, we think we know already the answer to this. If this, say, Haley's, the strain Haley's Comet that was out, if that was put forth for more stringent testing and a lot sooner, you believe that it would have helped Cadence, and that's right?
We weren't specifically using Haley's Comet. We had kind of an arsenal of a few different strains. I think, you could talk about a lot of different strains. Haley's Comet is, from my understanding, an excellent strain for seizures. There's a lot of talk about Charlotte's Web. There's high CBDs, there's, minimal THC. I think these kids need 5% THC, to be honest.
That's what I was getting at. Do you think the low CBD or the low THC, high CBD is enough? Or should they contain some levels of THC, detectable THC?
I think the plant was meant to be balanced. Breeding it too high in THC while ignoring CBD, and likewise breeding up the CBD and leaving no THC, I don't think works as effectively, and I think that's what a lot of parents are finding out. They jumped on the high CBD bandwagon, but they're discovering it's difficult. You need the other cannabinoids, and everybody metabolizes things different, right? So finding that right profile, having a compassionate doctor that's willing to take the time and go through with you. But there's so many stumbling blocks. I mean, it's expensive, and the legal route right now, if you're lucky enough to find a doctor who feels secure enough in his position that he's willing to sign on for a child under the age of 25. And right now the legal landscape is your child, if they're under the age of 25 and you're seeking medical marijuana, they have had to have tried all the other options first. That's the only way a doctor will say yes to this, is if your child, if you've tried every other thing first, well, every other thing first might kill your child before they have a chance to try medical marijuana.
Exactly.
Having half your brain removed is such an invasive procedure in the effort to quell seizures. Having a vagal nerve stimulator implanted in your chest that sends signals to help quell seizures, that is so invasive. Cannabis really needs to be a first-line therapy.
they're worried about giving cannabis to a child, and they're doing all that to such a young person. Like that's I have no words for that.
There are always ways around the psychoactivity of cannabis. There are always remedies for that. That should not be the only stumbling block. In fact, that's not a good enough logic to prohibit the plant in the first place. Psychoactivity is not a good enough reason to even just legalize it. It is a medicinal herb. It should not be considered a drug. It should have special status, as should all medicinal herbs, that they should not be treated as a drug. It's completely different.
Okay, I've got to go to a commercial break. Time to pay some bills, and you're absolutely right, Kim. Okay, and during this break, we're going to hear some more of the Killing Time Band and the song Ounce of Goodness. And when we return, Kim and I will continue our conversation with Kim Martelle. You're listening to the P.A.C.E Radio Show here on lifestyleradio.ca. You're listening to the P.A.C.E.
We're good friends till the bitter end. 'Cause I'll never bend. You know what?
Growing your own vegetables, flowers, or even medicinal plants can be a challenge without the right equipment and proper know-how. At BMA Hydroponics, not only are they your urban horticultural experts and suppliers, but their staff holds the customer's needs paramount to making a sale. Family-owned with decades of experience and knowledge, they offer free advice in person, by phone, or email. BMA Hydroponics wants to ensure you have the advice you need, which is why you'll find tips and tricks on different ways to grow, like wick, ebb and flow, drip, or aeroponic system, as well as other helpful links at bmahydroponics.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, just let them know, and they'll do everything they can to get what you're looking for. At BMA Hydroponics, each staff member also possesses a federal exemptee MMAR license, making their strong suit empathy, experience, and dedication to their customers. Because when you know how to grow, you'll have results that make you proud. BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario. Visit bmahydroponics.com.
BMA offers cannabinoid testing, so if you want to prove you've got good medicine, head to BMA Hydroponics and prove it.
The following is a public service announcement from the Canadian Medical Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Medical Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, we feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process, and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled, or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet, www.canadiantherapeuticCannabisPartners.com, on Facebook, CMCP Society, or search Canadian Medical Cannabis Partners.
Tune into the P.A.C.E Radio Show and catch Kim Cooper, Debbie Stoll-Skiffen, or Alison Murden, along with myself, Al Graham, as we talk to Canadian and international cannabis advocates who are working hard to help patients and to end cannabis prohibition. Catch us live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at lifestyleradio.ca.
Let your love light glow.
Welcome back, and thanks for tuning into the P.A.C.E Radio Show. We are being broadcasted live at lifestyleradio.ca, or maybe you're catching us at Soundcast, YouTube, or some other social media. Tonight, our bumper music was featured the Ontario-based band, the Killing Time Band, and their song "Ounce of Goodness." And believe there's no question, an ounce is of help with a lot of health goodness. And the band has many hits. And they also play at many different events across Ontario, and I'm sure probably other places as well. If you ever get a chance to see them live, please do. I know I've seen them several times myself. And if you can't find them in a live situation, you can always find the Killing Time band by searching for them on YouTube or going to the killingtimeband.com website. Tonight on the P.A.C.E Radio Show, I'm joined by our guest, Kim Martelle, and her story here of her daughter is quite powerful. and who somebody I'm going to call an accidental cannabis advocate, because I don't really know if she was into cannabis before this or not. We'll find out, I'm sure. And my joint host, Kim Cooper of Northern Ontario Cannabis Educational Resources. Kim and Kim, you're both with me still?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm back.
Gremlins and technology, they just never know. It happened earlier as we found out.
Thank God for my corded phone.
That's right. Exactly. All right. Before I hand you back over to Northern Kim, I have just one little quick question for you. I saw you for the first time speaking at Parliament Hill. It was a rally. Ted Smith had organized it. It was April the 1st. It was when the MMAR ended and the MMPR was starting out. You were there with Cadence and you were speaking. And I had never heard of you before. And I thought, wow, that's quite the speech. And thank you very much for speaking out. I don't know whether that was your first time doing that or what, but boy, you did a powerful job.
Thank you. I started advocating for my daughter, well, as soon as we got the diagnosis that she had intractable epilepsy. I started doing everything I could. We fundraised $30,000 with the help of 5 communities to raise enough money to get her 2 stem cell treatments in Mexico. And in order to do that, this was before I even knew cannabis could be used to treat seizures. And I started advocating campaigns and writing letters to MPs and learning how to do all that, all while trying to help a child with an extreme medical condition. And it was inspiring to meet other people and to learn from them and see how the inner workings of all that. I was not a cannabis advocate before this. I didn't have any problems with it. I'm a libertarian. I believe people, so long as they're not infringing on the liberties of others, that they should be able to choose how to medicate themselves. My concern for my daughter was that we needed to try something fast that worked, and after 2 stem cell treatments, we were tapped out for money. We couldn't afford the annual trips back to have it done every year to keep her in kind of a state of almost remission. So we turned to medical cannabis, and I just latched onto it. I knew we had to fight for it and fight like hell because the legal landscape of medical marijuana. So I got involved. I got online and I learned about the MMAR, the old regulatory system, and I learned about how difficult it was to get your license to grow and a license to use cannabis to treat a medical condition, and then how the Canadian government at the time, Health Canada, reared its ugly head and came down on all these people who were forthright about what they were doing because of a few people who abused the system and ruined it for everybody else. And I'm thinking, these people are on disability and they're doing this affordably. They're growing their own medicine affordably, and they're investing in all this knowledge that they have to acquire to learn how to propagate the plant, learn how to turn it into viable medicines. And I'm thinking, what a waste of resources when the government came down on these people and threatened them with criminal prosecution.
Yeah.
I'm a huge freak about social injustice. And here I am fighting for my daughter, and I hadn't even jumped on that bandwagon yet. If I'd have known 10 years ago that cannabis could help treat seizures, heck, I would have been all over that a long time ago. But we were just getting into this, so I didn't have a license to grow. I missed the boat on that. I didn't have a license to give my daughter cannabis. I missed the boat on that. But I saw the injustice in this, and when I heard that you guys were going to Ottawa to protest that on April 1st, I said to my husband, we need to go. He's like, we're there. And my husband's totally supported every crazy idea I've had through this whole process. We loaded the kids in the van. We drove 8 hours to Ottawa. We were there. Cadence was there. Darius, my son, was there, and we were part of that. And we hadn't looked back.
Yeah. It was for anybody who missed it. It was a powerful speech, and I'll always remember that was the thing where I met you and got to hear you speak. So, well, I'm going to pass you back over to Northern Kim, because I know she's got some questions for you. So, but thanks for that, Kim. Okay, Kim, Northern Kim.
Thank you, Al. Yeah, actually, a couple of things that you just touched on is a little bit of the direction that I wanted to go with you next. Not only is it next to impossible to find a doctor that is willing to prescribe cannabis to somebody under the age of 25, as you said, then it comes the problem of maintaining a good stream of that medication. When parents are approaching doctors, it is a difficult issue. Do you have anything advice on how they should arm themselves prior to going into such of a meeting with a doctor, where they're going to be actually looking at this and asking for this from their doctor? What should they have with them?
More balls than I have, because I always had the problem when I was approaching the doctor that I'm not quick-witted enough. And the doctors are very convinced in their methods and what they've been trained in school. They know their medications, but yet you're trying to impress upon them that you have all these parents. They've done some research about cannabis. Maybe they haven't. Maybe they haven't done any research at all, and they're looking to their doctors. I would like to tell parents, you can't expect your doctors to know enough about cannabinoid therapy. You need to do your homework before you approach your doctor. If you go in there knowing nothing about cannabinoids, it's frustrating, because even if you take the time to educate yourself on all this, you go in, and I do believe that the healthcare system is broken to a certain degree, because many patients will go into their doctor actually having educated themselves, and instead of being rewarded for being proactive and educating themselves, they're treated as a threat. Or they're treated as I found quite often that my intelligence was insulted, because I did know what I was talking about with cannabis and cannabinoids, and probably invested a lot more time in it than a lot of doctors have. But I'm willing to respect their position and work with them, and that it's a relationship. So my advice would be to not get defensive. Because my mistakes were I would get defensive with doctors because they weren't listening to me. But you have to be patient, and you have to be diplomatic, and you have to. It's a relationship, and I would like to see more doctors, and they're fantastic doctors. I mean, my own doctor has our own family physician has now started volunteering for the Cannabis Clinic of London. It's a referral service. And he's actually working with them, volunteering time, I believe, because of Cadence, because of how. Yeah,
that was my next thing. Was that because you educate his education through treating Cadence?
Yeah,
that he
and I like that. I like to see that doctors are willing to meet you halfway, and I like to see that doctors, they're professionals, right? They've got a lot under their belt. They've got a lot of education, and they're very smart. And I do believe in working with doctors, and I think that is what's going to propel this forward in medicine. But I like to believe that doctors do want to know more about this, and if you approach it from a defensive standpoint, they'll put up a wall too, and nothing will get done. So we really have to be willing to work with our doctors and say, okay, maybe you could learn something from me, and maybe I can learn something from you.
Right.
So
So go in armed with an education, but not ready for a fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Educate yourself. Learn how to make oils and extracts from dried cannabis. Learn how to do that. In fact, the legal way right now is an LP. And another thing that I should mention that is a stumbling block to getting effective medicines for children is the current landscape is that you get a prescription. If you're lucky enough to find a physician, a compassionate physician who's willing to work with you in your cannabis treatment for your child, then they encourage you, they might send you to a referral service like the Cannabis Clinic in London. You'll talk to another doctor over Skype or whatever, and they will give you your prescription, because a lot of doctors, even your family doctor, I believe they feel threatened by the College of Physicians. I think the College of Physicians is still putting some pressure on them not to prescribe. So they're trying to refer it out to clinics that maybe have a remote doctor.
Third-party referrals.
Yes. And they give you, to my knowledge, that is a way of getting a prescription. But once you get a prescription, and this is the child we're dealing with, so unless they've tried everything, if they're under the age of 25 and they've tried everything else, and this physician feels comfortable prescribing your child, then it goes on to an LP. And you have to register with a licensed producer. You have to find a strain that will work for your child, and that is a whole other pile. That's a whole other problematic thing, because even though
with the new LPs, though, Health Canada has given them restrictions on the strengths of the oils and the tinctures that they're allowed to sell. And many people are saying they're nowhere near strong enough to help with most conditions.
That's right.
That?
Yeah. I think there's not a lot of strains that are really high in CBD, but that's beside the point. A balanced one child might respond to a higher THC, and like a lot of kids are responding more to a 1-to-1.
A 1-to-1 ratio, something that's more balanced.
Something that's more balanced, exactly.
Yeah, it could be something like, there's the strains out there that are 7% THC, 7% CBD. And and yet that's something that some people might be scared to give a young child because of the fact it's got THC in it. But as we mentioned earlier, you need it all. You need the synergy, how it all works together.
Yeah,
that psychoactive effect, by the way, is as we know quite well, that psychoactive effect dissipates with regular use of cannabis.
Correct.
That's right. So you only feel that way.
Then you just get the epilepsy relief. You just get the pain relief. You're not high. But there's a lot of drugs that you start, and I'll say this right now. I've just been started on Cymbalta because my doctors just diagnosed me with clinical depression and fibromyalgia. And that's the pain. That's the pain that comes from being a caregiver every single day, every hour of the day. Please don't get me wrong, I do not blame my daughter. But I led a sedentary lifestyle because I had to be home with her all the time. And I have a great deal of pain. And I didn't look after myself.
Of course.
Because she was my priority.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Exactly.
So now I'm on Cymbalta, and I've had to go through 2 weeks of hell until this drug until my system gets used to this. In addition to the Cymbalta, and this is how I know about the London Cannabis Clinic, is I went through my doctor and I applied for my prescription for medical marijuana.
Right.
There you go.
Well,
because I want to relieve my pain, and I want to relieve it naturally.
I encourage you to continue that because I would much rather see you using a natural medicine over these pharmaceuticals. Personally, I can tell you a life of being on antidepressants is not a life for anybody.
No. And I know with this Cymbalta, I haven't experienced a whole lot of pain management with the Cymbalta. But I know that my feelings don't spike. I don't feel really great, and I don't feel really bad. It kind of levels you out. And I don't know, that's probably a good thing considering I've been going through a tough time. But I think there will come a point where I don't want to be on this anymore, that I'm getting therapy to grief counseling and stuff like that, and I want to get to a better place. I have a husband and I have a son. I want to be present. I want to live, you know, like my daughter lived when she could.
Yeah.
You have to do the same.
Yeah. So back to the cost, back to accessing medical cannabis. When you sign up for a licensed producer, it's not covered by OHIP. You do not get any coverage for medical cannabis to treat your child, and the cannabis program is quite costly. So here you are, you might sign up with an LP and try a couple different strains to see if they work. You might have spent $300 or $400 on your first order for maybe a half-month supply or a month's supply of medical marijuana. You get it. As a parent, you don't know what the hell to do with dried cannabis. You might have a child that has a feeding tube like my daughter had, can't swallow. You have to figure out how to get it into her. So all of a sudden you have to learn how to make a product that you can actually give your child, a tincture or an oil. I believe there's only about 2 LPs that are making an oil now. But, you know, more will come, but it's still right now, it's neither here nor there. But parents should learn how to make oils and extracts. The problem is, after you make an oil or an extract, you need to get it tested. You need to know that what you have is still, the ratio is still what you expect it to be. That could cost you $200 to $400 to have it tested.
And that's each time. Each time
you can see.
Wow.
This is adding up, right? The dollar signs, ching, 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 and these parents don't have a lot of money.
No. And usually you're in a situation, you know, one parent obviously is staying home and looking after the child, and the other, so you're one parent working family.
Yeah.
That's right. You're short an income already.
After you go through all that trouble, guess what? The strain doesn't work for your child. They need a different strain.
Yeah.
So you start this all over again until you can find the right balance. But once you get it, you'll be good, and you can get very, very good seizure control.
Yes. Yeah. I've been following one of our past guests on the show in the past with his daughter, and like she's just doing fantastic. And then you see some like young Liam who still have some seizures here and there and stuff, but you know the quality of life has improved thousands of times.
Yeah,
absolutely. They're all doing
even if
so
you can
much
reduce
better.
Even if you can reduce seizures from 100 seizures a day down to 5.
Yeah, exactly.
That's miraculous.
That's a huge success.
Exactly. Okay. Well, Kim, this has been great talking to you. You know, I want to make sure that we're gonna have to have you come back on again because there's more questions and stuff, and we could probably keep talking for another hour about all this. So we'll save that.
I didn't get anywhere near my list.
Yeah, that's right. So there you go. We're gonna have you come back on the show and talk about more of these things that you've been doing and share more of Candace's story. But for now, what we usually do is have our guests, we like to highlight something, allow them to highlight something as far as a website or a person, place, or thing, something like that. You got anything offhand? Yeah.
I would like to let people know that there's an event coming up the end of February in London, Ontario. And it's through the Epilepsy Support Group, and it's a medical marijuana information session, and they can find information at epilepsysupport.ca/news/medical-marijuana-information-session. And I've been asked to speak at that event, but there'll be another mom advocate who advocates for her son strongly, and I'd just like to say that if there's any parents with kids with epilepsy or any serious medical condition that were listening to this tonight, I just hope they know that we all work together. And my little girl's gone, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop. I maybe have resources now and have the time to fight for these other parents. I'd like to try and do that, but I'd like to tell them to hang in there.
Hang in there. Well, thank you very much, Kim, for doing this. I know there's one person right in my top of my head right now who I'm going to make sure gets to listen to this story. She reached out to me when a friend of hers, young daughter of 3 months, had ended up in the hospital with seizures. And, they weren't sure what they wanted to do because they were in a pressure situation. So I'm going to make sure that they get to listen to what you had to say. So thank you very much for that. Kim, Northern Kim, have you got a website or something you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I'm going to give my shout out to the NOSER group, Northern Ontario Cannabis Education and Reform is gearing up for their second annual 420 coming up on April the 20th. So come on out to Hillsbury and join us.
Oh, April the 20th. Nice date. Actually,
you guys want to say hi?
Hi. My husband and my son are going to say hi.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi,
everybody.
Hi, everybody.
All right. This is just a reminder to let everybody know that I will be back next Wednesday with my joint host, Allison Murden, and her guest, the always interesting Russell Barth, as we continue to promote those who are educating the uneducated and those fighting to bring an end to cannabis prohibition. You can find P.A.C.E on Twitter at P.A.C.E Radio, and you can also like the P.A.C.E Radio show on Facebook. We are also found on the web at pace-online.ca, or you can find us by searching for people advocating cannabis education. Thank yous go out to our show sponsor, the friendly folks at B.A.C.E Hydroponics, who are located in Belleville, Ontario, Al Rapp of Lifestyle Radio. Also, a big thank you to our guest, Kim Martelle, who told us a very powerful story tonight, and my joint host, Northern Ontario, Kim Cooper. Plus, a big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in to tonight's program. Thank you, and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, and good night.
So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.